The grid hummed softly, its sensors sweeping across the docking bay where a collection of strange beings had gathered. Alien forms of all shapes and sizes moved with precision, their movements calculated, deliberate, and filled with a quiet menace. Their skin shimmered in colors that no human eye had ever seen before, some translucent, others metallic, and a few covered in patterns that seemed to shift when observed. They all carried weapons of some kind, energy blades, plasma rifles, or strange mechanical devices that hummed with power. Among them, a human stood out, though not in the way the others did. Ethan adjusted the strap of his simple pack, feeling the weight of the small supplies inside. He looked around, taking in the tall, spindly aliens with multiple limbs, the floating creatures whose eyes glowed like lanterns, and the armored ones that hissed and clicked as they walked. Unlike them, Ethan had nothing. No armor, no weapon, no enhancements. Just his plain clothes, his boots, and a sharp mind that he himself had never thought of as special. To anyone looking from a distance, he was unremarkable, small, thin, and seemingly fragile. The grid, a vast artificial intelligence that managed the observation hub, was tasked with analyzing every species that came into its jurisdiction. It scanned Ethan carefully, its virtual sensors noting every detail: bone density, muscle mass, reflex patterns, cognitive output, and even subtle signs of emotional response. After a few moments, it classified him as unarmed. Ethan's mind, however, was more active than any physical ability could suggest. The grid sensors caught the unusual spikes in his neural patterns, sudden bursts of thought, rapid problem-solving processes, and complex prediction loops. These were anomalies that didn't fit its standard templates. It paused, then added the note to its records: neural activity slightly abnormal for unarmed classification. Further observation recommended. Meanwhile, the aliens around Ethan were laughing quietly among themselves. A tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms whispered something in a clicking language to a shorter, green-skinned companion. They snorted and gestured toward Ethan, pointing at his empty hands and the simple bag slung across his shoulder. "Look at him," the blue one said in a broken universal tongue. "No armor. No weapon. He cannot even defend himself. This one is useless." Ethan heard none of it. He was busy watching, analyzing the behavior of the others. Their movements, though coordinated, followed patterns. They assumed strength and speed would solve every problem. He noticed how some of the taller aliens favored brute force, while the smaller ones relied on agility but ignored the simplest environmental hazards around them. Every action had a weakness, and Ethan's mind began to map them, one by one, like a game he had played 1,000 times in his childhood. But now the stakes were much higher. The grid continued its assessment silently, noting patterns and logging data. It compared Ethan to hundreds of other humans in its database, running simulations based on every known human behavior. Each simulation ended the same way: humans with no weapons would almost certainly fail in combat situations, be quickly overpowered, and often exploited by more physically capable species. Ethan's data, however, produced unexpected results. His micro-adjustments in posture, his ability to notice small environmental advantages, and his quick reactions to subtle stimuli caused the simulations to behave unpredictably. One of the alien observers, a creature named Sira, noticed Ethan's gaze and tilted her head in confusion. Humans were supposed to be weak, clumsy, and easy to intimidate. This one, however, did not flinch. He did not step back. Instead, he seemed calm, almost curious, as if the entire room were a puzzle waiting for him to solve. Sira's multiple eyes narrowed slightly. Something about this human did not fit her experience. Ethan took a careful step forward, his boots making soft contact with the metallic floor. He noticed a panel slightly ajar on the wall, exposing a faintly glowing conduit beneath. A small idea sparked in his mind. Not for attack, not for aggression, but for awareness. The conduit could be used as leverage, a shield, or a tool, depending on what happened next. He filed the thought away, silent, unobtrusive. The aliens continued their quiet chatter. They measured Ethan with their own perceptions based on size, posture, and the fact that his hands were empty. To them he was not a concern. Yet every small detail they ignored Ethan noticed. The patterns in their footfalls, the rhythm of their breathing, even the way they unconsciously leaned toward each other for security, all of it formed a map in his mind. Suddenly, the grid detected a rapid sequence of neural activity spikes in Ethan's brain. His thoughts were connecting too many variables at once, making predictions far beyond what the AI simulations had expected. For a moment, the grid paused its standard assessments. Humans were already unpredictable compared to other species, but this one's calculations, though unspoken, invisible, were staggering. Ethan moved closer to the center of the room, adjusting his position just slightly, almost imperceptibly. A small alien, its legs bent awkwardly for speed, brushed past him. Ethan didn't flinch or step back. Instead, he adjusted his stance, avoiding collision, and subtly shifted his weight to remain balanced. The grid noted this as coordinated self-preservation behavior, highly efficient. Syrah leaned closer to the blue-skinned alien and whispered again. "Why does he move like he can anticipate us?" she asked, almost to herself. "No human should." Her words stopped mid-thought. She did not understand, and she probably never would, how much the human brain could compensate for a lack of physical advantage. Ethan's eyes flicked toward a doorway that led to the observation corridor. The door's sensors flashed lightly, a sign that it could be manipulated. He did not move to open it, he merely noted it. Observation was as important as action. The aliens had all their strength, all their weapons, all their armor, yet they had never trained to notice a single human moving with awareness alone. The grid continued to log data, now with heightened interest. Its programming instructed it to rank threats and abilities, but Ethan did not fit the algorithm. Standard inputs, strength, speed, weaponry, reflexes, predicted one thing. Ethan's neural adaptability, problem-solving instincts, and acute observational skills predicted another, entirely unquantifiable outcome. From the corner of the room, another alien, smaller and wiry, shifted nervously. Its name was Talik. He had expected an easy evaluation, a human who could be ignored or dismissed. Watching Ethan, he felt a twinge of unease. The human seemed to notice everything, not just people but small environmental details, subtle sounds, and movements the aliens assumed would be irrelevant. Each minor detail Ethan could use if needed. Ethan finally sat down on a small crate, crossing his legs in a casual manner. It was a simple gesture, but one that gave him stability and a sense of control. The grid noted this as minimal exertion, maximized situational awareness. The aliens barely registered it. Sitting on a crate was not threatening. But Ethan's calmness, the steady rhythm of his breathing, and the subtle scanning of the room suggested a mind that was always calculating, always predicting. The AI ran another set of simulations. What if this human were to face the strongest alien in the room? The results were inconclusive. What if he had to navigate a complex, dangerous terrain? The human consistently adapted, leveraging minute details in the environment for survival. What if multiple enemies attacked at once? Again, the human survived in ways the AI could not predict. The aliens began to notice small inconsistencies. Ethan had done nothing overtly aggressive, yet he seemed untouchable. Talik whispered to Syrah, "I don't understand. He has no weapons, no armor, yet he stopped, realizing he could not explain it. The human's presence alone altered the dynamics of the room. Ethan stood slowly, brushing dust from his pants. He made no sudden movements. He did not look threatening. Yet every small action he took, every glance, every shift in weight, every micro-adjustment, spoke of awareness and anticipation far beyond what the aliens expected. The grid's conclusion, at least for now, remained cautious. It updated its internal records, human-designated unarmed. Neural patterns suggest potential threat beyond current measurement. Recommend continuous monitoring and reassessment. Ethan looked around one last time before stepping toward the exit. He did not notice the aliens staring, nor the grid recording. He only saw possibilities, patterns, and outcomes, everything that mattered in that small room. The grid, though silent, continued to watch, and for the first time, it hesitated. This human, so unremarkable by physical standards, might be something far more significant than any other species it had ever catalogued. And somewhere deep inside its circuits, a new variable had been added, one that no formula could fully understand. Ethan blinked as the walls around him shifted, glowing with a faint blue light. The simulated arena was unlike anything he had ever seen. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground, and streams of molten metal flowed slowly in certain corridors. Strange vents hissed clouds of steam, and the floor sometimes shook beneath him, sending tiny pebbles sliding across the metallic surface. He looked around and saw the alien combatants already moving, each of them scanning the terrain like predators in a hunt. Some of the taller ones had long, sharp claws and armored skin that reflected the harsh lights overhead. Others floated above the ground, their limbs moving in patterns that humans could not naturally match. There were creatures with energy weapons built into their bodies, and a few that seemed to shift shape as they walked. Ethan, on the other hand, stood still, letting his eyes take in every detail. He had no armor, no enhancements, no weapon but his mind, and he knew that might be enough. The grid sensors tracked his every move. It noted the calmness in his stance, the slight tension in his shoulders, and the way his eyes flicked quickly across the room. Algorithms had predicted that humans in such situations would panic, make mistakes, or freeze entirely. Ethan did none of these. Already, the grid recorded an anomaly. He was assessing the situation far faster than expected, his brain calculating probabilities almost instinctively. A low growl echoed from one of the corners. A quadrupedal alien with sharp teeth and thick hide charged toward a smaller, slower creature. Ethan observed how it moved, its momentum, the direction of its legs, and the timing of its attack. He noticed a loose metal panel nearby, bent and half-detached from the wall. Without thinking, he ran toward it, kicked it free, and held it in front of him like a crude shield. The creature lunged toward him. Ethan sidestepped, letting the panel take the brunt of the impact. Sparks flew, and the alien stumbled slightly, its momentum broken. Ethan pushed the panel to the side and ducked behind a pile of rubble. From his new position, he picked up a small rock and threw it toward another creature that had started circling around him. The rock struck the alien's foot, causing it to stumble. A few other combatants looked his way, surprised by his quick and simple improvisation. The grid sensors recorded every move. Unarmed classification inadequate, it noted internally. Adaptive problem-solving exceeding current predictive models. The system paused momentarily, adjusting its calculations. It had never seen a human utilize environmental factors in such a fluid and efficient manner. Ethan did not pause. He ran along a ledge, keeping low to avoid the sharp claws of a creature that followed his previous path. He ducked behind a broken console and observed the movements of the other aliens. Each of them assumed strength or weapons were the primary factor in survival. They had not considered the possibility that a human could read patterns and use timing, movement, and objects as tools. He noticed a narrow gap between two pillars. A creature with an energy weapon patrolled the area ahead. Ethan crouched low and crawled silently, keeping his movements subtle. The alien's gaze swept past him, completely unaware of his presence. He reached the other side and paused, taking a deep breath, and then moved toward another area where two more combatants had cornered a small, floating creature. Ethan threw a small stone at a wall, producing a loud clatter. The aliens' heads turned instinctively, and in that instant he darted past them, moving like a shadow between walls and pillars. The grid analyzed the movement and flagged it as exceptional situational awareness and misdirection behavior. Algorithms recalculated, now considering variables they had not even accounted for. Some aliens began communicating with each other in low tones, their voices a mixture of clicks, hums, and vibrations. "He moves, unlike any human," one said, its tone full of caution. Another replied, "He has no weapons. How does he avoid everything?" Their confusion grew as they tried to predict his actions. Their programming, or instincts, assumed humans to be limited, fragile, and predictable. Ethan had proven otherwise within minutes. A sudden tremor shook the ground and molten metal streamed across a corridor, cutting off the path for some of the alien combatants. They stumbled, flailed, and tried to leap over the hazard. Ethan noticed a smaller panel nearby that he could use. He kicked it loose, sending it sliding into the molten flow. Sparks and smoke erupted, creating a visual barrier. A few aliens hesitated, unsure how to cross. Ethan moved past silently, using the moment of distraction to gain ground. The grid noted his efficiency in real time. Environmental manipulation, advanced. Reaction time, superior. Strategic improvisation, exceptional. No prior simulations had ever recorded this combination of speed, observation, and adaptability in a human. It began running new subroutines attempting to predict his next moves. Yet each simulation concluded with different outcomes, none of them fully accurate. Ethan paused near a pile of jagged stones, glancing around. He noticed the patrol pattern of an alien with a whip-like tail. Timing it carefully, he leaped over a small ledge just as the tail whipped past, narrowly avoiding a deadly strike. The grid logged it as precise spatial judgment, human reflexes approaching apex potential when combined with predictive reasoning. He crouched behind a large rock formation, then observed a pair of aliens attempting to corner a floating creature. Ethan realized that they were relying on intimidation and brute force. Using the moment, he picked up a loose piece of debris and dropped it behind one alien, producing a sudden noise. Their heads turned reflexively, giving him the chance to slip past unnoticed. The floating creature followed instinctively, using Ethan's movements as a subtle guide. Time passed in a blur. Ethan moved from shadow to shadow, improvising shields, throwing small rocks and exploiting the aliens' own assumptions against them. The larger, stronger combatants could not predict his moves because he did not act like they expected. He adjusted constantly, flowing with the environment rather than fighting against it. The grid updated its internal report multiple times. Human efficiency exceeds prediction. Combat strategies unconventional. Potential threat level, re-evaluation required. The system's calm, logical voice noted each success, analyzing the human's mental processes, but it could not assign a definitive outcome. Ethan had broken all preconceptions. One alien, observing from above, hissed, "How can one human do all this without weapons?" Its companion looked down at Ethan, the confusion and fear evident in its posture. They began coordinating more carefully, trying to anticipate his next move. But each attempt failed. Ethan had already considered their strategy and moved in ways they could not understand. Ethan finally paused on a small platform overlooking a wide corridor. From there, he could see multiple aliens converging from different directions. Most would rely on speed and strength to overwhelm him. He smiled faintly. He didn't need to overpower them. He only needed to guide their movements, use the environment, and wait for the right moment. Timing, patience, and observation, his tools were enough. A sudden rumble shook the floor and several floating creatures swerved, trying to keep their balance. Ethan noticed the tilt of the platform, predicting how they would move next. He positioned a small metal panel in their path. As they approached, the panel shifted, causing the creatures to stumble slightly. He slipped past them with ease, continuing toward his next point of observation. The grid noted the event with growing interest. Human demonstrates predictive modeling beyond current capabilities. Strategic use of environment, unmatched. Physical limitations compensated entirely by cognitive ability. It began adjusting its classification protocols. Ethan's efficiency could no longer be considered normal, and the old tag of unarmed seemed absurd in retrospect. Ethan crouched in a narrow passage, noticing two aliens locked in a heated struggle with each other. He observed, calculated, and then waited. The grid's algorithms ran multiple scenarios in real time, trying to determine the outcome. None matched what happened next. Ethan used a small rock to create a distraction. The two aliens, momentarily confused, looked in the wrong direction. Ethan slipped between them silently, unharmed and unnoticed. The aliens, who had relied on their natural strength, agility, or weapons, now looked around with unease. "He is too precise," one whispered. "He predicts without moving. He acts without attacking." They could not comprehend that someone could survive and navigate the arena by thinking faster and observing better than any weapon could achieve. Ethan reached a small elevated platform and took a moment to breathe. He did not feel fear or urgency. He only felt awareness, calculation, and the constant drive to adapt. He glanced down at the arena, noting paths, obstacles, and alien positions. Every movement he made was deliberate, though it appeared effortless to any observer. The grid, now fully engaged, ran simulations of every possible move the aliens could make against him. Every result returned anomalies. Ethan's ability to improvise, predict, and manipulate his environment could not be fully simulated. He had surpassed the limits of every algorithm the system had in place. Ethan stood, moving along the platform with quiet confidence. Every step, every glance, every decision showed a human who had nothing but his mind, and yet, in that arena he seemed unstoppable. The aliens no longer laughed quietly. They whispered nervously, uncertain, confused, and perhaps a little afraid. The grid updated its final report for the moment. Human efficiency exceeds prediction. Adaptive capacity, extreme. Physical limitations compensated entirely by environmental manipulation and cognitive ability. Reclassify, unarmed designation insufficient. Continuous monitoring recommended. Ethan paused, looking at the aliens below him. They assumed power in weapons, size, and natural advantage. They did not understand that his strength came from something they could never see directly: awareness, intelligence, and timing. And for the first time in its existence, the grid could not fully predict what would happen next. Ethan moved carefully across the arena, his eyes scanning every detail. The floor was uneven, dotted with pits and narrow ledges, some filled with glowing liquid that hissed when touched. Broken machinery and debris littered the area, creating both obstacles and opportunities. Aliens lurked in every corner, some armed with weapons, some with natural claws and spikes, and others with strange energy projections. Yet no matter how many he faced, Ethan adjusted, moved, and adapted with ease. He came to a trap, a narrow corridor with a panel on the ceiling that threatened to drop spikes. The corridor was lined with pressure plates that would trigger additional hazards if stepped on incorrectly. The grid analyzed the setup quickly, expecting the human to hesitate, stumble, or trigger a trap. But Ethan did none of that. He crouched, observing the spacing of the plates, and calculated his steps. One by one he moved through the corridor, precise and deliberate, never touching a plate. The grid updated its logs in real time. Precision in movement exceeds anticipated human capability. Spatial reasoning advanced. Risk assessment and avoidance, highly efficient. It ran multiple simulations attempting to account for his choices. Each time the outcome varied. None of the predicted results matched what Ethan was doing. He was breaking every standard model of behavior the grid had for humans. Ahead, a group of aliens blocked his path. Two were armed with energy rifles, one with sharp, armored claws, and another with a whip-like tail. They expected him to panic, to run, or to attack directly. Ethan simply observed, crouched behind a piece of broken machinery, and waited. Their movements followed predictable patterns. He had already seen their patrol routes, their pauses, and the tiny signals they gave to each other when coordinating attacks. Ethan grabbed a loose piece of metal from the ground and threw it toward the edge of a wall. It clattered loudly, drawing the attention of one of the aliens. The others shifted instinctively, trying to adjust their positions. In that instant, Ethan sprinted to a narrow side passage, moving silently and quickly. One alien lunged after him, but he twisted out of the way, ducking under a swinging metal pipe. The grid noted every micro-adjustment in his movements, every split-second decision that allowed him to remain unharmed. Nearby, Clara and Leo, two aliens who had been observing from a distance, whispered nervously to each other. He is too precise, Clara said. We thought he was weak, unarmed. But he sees everything. He knows our moves before we make them. Leo nodded, his voice low. He is more than just human. He is unpredictable. He cannot be stopped by brute force. Their concern was genuine. They had underestimated him, and now it was clear their assumptions were wrong. The human they had dismissed as unarmed was outsmarting every one of them. Ethan moved deeper into the arena, encountering another trap. A grid of lasers crisscrossed the hallway, set to trigger alarms and defensive mechanisms if broken. Most aliens relied on agility or brute strength to bypass hazards like these. Ethan studied the pattern, noting the timing between each laser pulse. He slid under one, ducked another, and jumped over a third, moving with the rhythm of the system itself. The grid recalculated, marking him as highly capable, and increasing the priority of his file. A large alien with armored skin charged him suddenly, claws extended. Ethan barely reacted with his body. He shifted his weight and sidestepped at the perfect moment, using a piece of rubble to trip the creature. It stumbled forward, crashing into the floor. Ethan didn't attack, he merely created an opportunity to pass. His strength was not in fighting directly but in reading the environment and controlling the flow of movement. The grid began running dozens of new simulations simultaneously. It tried to predict how Ethan would behave if faced with multiple attackers, unfamiliar traps, or rapid changes in terrain. Every scenario returned unpredictable results. He moved in ways that algorithms could not fully capture. His intelligence, observation, and quick thinking gave him an advantage far beyond what the grid had ever recorded for any species. Ethan paused for a moment to catch his breath, crouching behind a large, broken column. From this vantage point he could see a group of aliens trying to flank him. He noted their positions and calculated the paths they would likely take. He also noticed a series of loose panels above them. Using a simple throw, he dislodged one panel, which fell and created a barrier between him and the attackers. They adjusted, but he had already moved along a different path, silently and efficiently. The aliens grew increasingly frustrated. Some began arguing, pointing fingers and gesturing wildly. He anticipates everything, one hissed. He moves like he knows our plans. Another tried to attack from a distance, but Ethan had already observed the angle and used debris as cover. He seemed to flow through the arena rather than fight in it, always one step ahead. Clara and Leo watched in disbelief. We were so wrong, Leo muttered. This human, he cannot be stopped. Ethan approached a puzzle, an ancient-looking door with multiple locks, pressure points, and energy sensors. The grid expected humans to struggle here, relying on trial and error or even failing entirely. Ethan studied the mechanism carefully. He traced the connections, understood the patterns, and activated the locks in a precise order. Within moments, the door opened smoothly as if it were meant to obey him. The grid's report flagged this action immediately: problem-solving speed and logical analysis, exceptional. Human displays advanced understanding of mechanical and energy systems. Classification, reassessment required. Ethan had just solved a complex problem faster than any alien or machine in the simulation. He continued moving, encountering more alien patrols, more traps, and unpredictable obstacles. Every time he adapted. Rocks became shields, debris became weapons, shadows became cover. Each movement was fluid, almost effortless, yet perfectly calculated. He never wasted energy, never made unnecessary motions, and always stayed one step ahead. Some aliens tried to coordinate better, forming groups and watching each other's flanks. But Ethan anticipated this too. He created distractions, altered their perception, and used their own formations against them. He disarmed a few by knocking weapons from their hands with clever maneuvers. Others stumbled into traps they thought he would never notice. The grid continued recalculating at incredible speed. Its system noted that Ethan's adaptive reasoning and situational awareness were far beyond normal human capacity. Standard human models were no longer applicable. The AI ran new predictions, but every output suggested uncertainty. Ethan's choices could not be fully predicted or controlled. Clara whispered to Leo again. He is unstoppable. I cannot understand him. Every move he makes is perfect, yet he does not rely on power or speed. He only thinks, and that is enough. Leo nodded slowly, watching Ethan move through the arena. We underestimated him. Completely. We cannot fight him the way we fight anyone else. Their fear was quiet, but it was real. This human, so unassuming at first glance, had become the center of their concern. Ethan reached the final section of the arena, where a group of aliens had gathered, hoping to corner him. He paused for a second, assessing the situation. He noticed loose panels above, a narrow ledge to the side, and a series of pressure plates that could be used to create obstacles. With careful timing, he triggered the plates to collapse beneath the advancing aliens. They stumbled, fell, and were momentarily disoriented. Using the opening, he moved past them, still unharmed. The grid sensors highlighted his every action: adaptive problem-solving, predictive movement, environmental manipulation, and tactical efficiency. Human exceeds previous classification. Current designation, unarmed. Reclassification suggested, highly capable. Further monitoring required. The AI began updating its internal parameters to track new potential abilities, noting that standard human models were no longer adequate. Ethan finally stopped in a safe corner, crouched behind a pile of rubble. He observed, planned, and rested for a brief moment. The aliens, exhausted and frustrated, regrouped and whispered among themselves. Some began to respect his skill, others feared it, and a few still tried to understand it. None could fully grasp how a human with no weapons and no enhancements had moved through the arena with such precision, intelligence, and foresight. Clara spoke quietly to Leo, her voice almost a whisper. We judged him wrong from the start. This human, he is not just unarmed. He is unstoppable. The grid continued its analysis, running simulations that had never been attempted before. It created scenarios where Ethan faced increasingly difficult conditions, including multiple traps, stronger aliens, and more complex puzzles. Each simulation revealed the same truth. Ethan adapted, learned, and overcame challenges in ways that the system could not fully predict. Ethan looked across the arena, his breathing steady, his mind alert. He had no weapons, no armor, no special implants. Yet he moved with confidence, intelligence, and precision that surpassed anything the grid had anticipated. Every obstacle had become a tool, every threat a lesson, and every alien an unwitting participant in his silent strategy. For the first time, the grid acknowledged a new reality. Its algorithms could track, measure, and simulate almost everything, but this human had introduced a variable it could not fully calculate. He was no longer just a human, he was something new, something unpredictable, something highly capable. And somewhere deep in its vast network, the grid began to adjust its systems, preparing for the inevitable. Humans might not be just another species to catalog, they might be the species to watch, the one that could change everything. Ethan stood in the center of the arena, the metallic walls glowing faintly around him. The grid had reclassified him just moments ago, Apex Entity. The new designation appeared in streams of data across the system, highlighting his unmatched combination of intelligence, adaptability, and instinct. For the first time, the AI treated him not as a standard human but as something far beyond any normal prediction. He did not move immediately. He did not need to. The aliens were already gathering, dozens of them converging from every corner of the arena. Some were armed with energy blades, others with plasma rifles, and a few with natural weapons, claws, spikes, or whip-like tails. Their numbers alone would have overwhelmed any ordinary human. But Ethan was not ordinary. He observed them calmly. His eyes moved quickly, scanning patterns in their formations, noting their weaknesses and calculating timing. Every alien had a rhythm, a predictable way of moving, even the strongest and fastest among them. He did not see weapons as a threat, they were just objects. What mattered were choices, patience, and environment. A massive creature with armored skin charged first, claws raised high. Ethan shifted slightly, barely moving, and let the creature crash past him. Sparks flew as it slammed into a jagged wall. Its momentum carried it forward, and he had already anticipated the way it would stumble. A smaller alien, floating above, tried to swoop down at him. Ethan slid behind a pile of rubble, using the rocks as a barrier. Its descent caused it to overshoot, and it landed clumsily against the wall. The grid recorded every micro-movement. Human demonstrates environmental manipulation and predictive tactics beyond current algorithms. Efficiency, unmatched. Threat level, apex. Multiple simulations ran simultaneously, yet none could fully predict Ethan's next move. Every decision he made changed the environment, altered the alien's behavior, and created new possibilities. Ethan moved slowly toward a narrow corridor lined with panels hanging from the ceiling. He could feel the heat of molten streams flowing nearby and hear the hissing of steam vents. He knew exactly how the aliens would react to each obstacle. One group lunged forward, expecting to corner him, but he ducked behind a metal panel and nudged it slightly. It fell toward their path, blocking the corridor and forcing the aliens to stop, stumble, and regroup. He did not attack directly. He never did. His strength lay in anticipation, observation, and timing. He watched as the aliens tried to move as one, relying on numbers, weapons, and brute force. Each step they took played into his strategy. Rocks were shields, shadows were hiding spots, loose panels were barriers or distractions. Every simple object became part of his plan. From a high ledge, Clara and Leo observed. Their voices were tense. "He cannot be stopped," Clara whispered. "Every move, he predicts, yet we cannot see him acting. How is this possible?" Leo's voice was low, full of awe and fear. "He is more than a human. He thinks faster than we move. Faster than the strongest here. He is unstoppable." Ethan crouched, scanning the arena. Dozens of aliens now surrounded him, converging from every angle. Their formation tightened. He noticed a series of pressure plates along the floor, linked to falling panels above. Without hesitation, he kicked a small stone onto one of the plates. A panel above tilted and crashed down toward an approaching alien. It staggered, giving Ethan just enough space to slip past. Another group tried to flank him. He saw their approach in the corner of his eye, predicting their speed and timing. Using the rubble and broken panels around him, he created a maze of obstacles. Aliens collided with walls, tripped over debris, or blocked each other's path. Ethan moved like a shadow, perfectly timed, always ahead, always safe. The grid, for the first time, registered a near error in its predictions. Adaptive strategy exceeds maximum threshold. Probability of failure, negligible. Human apex status confirmed. It began updating simulations in real time, but even with its immense processing power, it could not foresee every move he made. He was too dynamic, too creative, and too precise. Ethan reached the center of a wide chamber. Aliens converged from multiple corridors, weapons raised, eyes focused on him. One armored giant lunged with claws extended, another fired a plasma blast, and several more swarmed from above and behind. He did not panic. He paused for a fraction of a second, calculating angles, predicting momentum, and choosing the perfect sequence. A simple move, a kick of a loose panel, sent sparks flying. The armored giant tripped over the debris and slid toward a wall. The plasma blast hit a piece of rubble Ethan had already nudged into its path, diverting the energy harmlessly to the side. Others collided with each other, disoriented and confused. His strategy was simple yet flawless. Every step, every adjustment, every improvisation led him closer to safety and control. He used a combination of timing and misdirection. A panel here, a rock there, a shadow to hide in, a burst of noise from falling debris. Each alien reacted instinctively, yet always too slowly, too predictably. They were strong, fast, and dangerous, but they relied on their physical advantage. Ethan relied on his mind. From the observation balcony, Clara gasped. "He is guiding them without touching them. He manipulates the battlefield itself. He is the apex." Leo shook his head. "He survives not by fighting but by controlling," The strongest weapon is his mind. Everything else is irrelevant. The arena echoed with the chaos of combatants colliding, stumbling, and being misdirected. Ethan moved fluidly, effortlessly, as if the environment itself were part of him. Rocks became walls, panels became barriers, shadows became safe zones, and timing became his ally. Every alien attack, every advance, every attempt to corner him failed. Ethan paused for a second, crouched behind a pile of rubble. His breathing was steady, calm, controlled. He did not need to fight in the traditional sense. His enemies had already been defeated by their own assumptions, their own patterns, and their own reactions. He had outsmarted them without striking a single blow, without carrying a weapon heavier than a rock, without relying on strength. The grid systems registered this as the final confirmation. Human reclassified, apex entity. All previous assumptions invalid. Adaptive intelligence exceeds all known parameters. Potential impact on galactic interactions, extreme. Its own sensors designed to track and predict could only watch in awe. Ethan stood slowly, surveying the arena. The aliens who remained, those who had been strongest, most cunning, or fastest, looked at him in disbelief. They had been certain of victory. They had assumed the human was weak, unarmed, and unremarkable. He had proven them all wrong. Clara and Leo, once confident and mocking, now whispered quietly among themselves. We misjudged him completely. He is beyond anything we expected. The grid continued recording, noting every detail. Ethan's ability to adapt, predict, and control the environment, his tactical patience, and his precise use of timing and objects. It acknowledged a new truth. This human had become the apex of survival and strategy, far beyond physical strength, weapons, or speed. Ethan took a step forward, his eyes scanning for any remaining threats. He moved with calm confidence, like someone who understood that danger was only what he made of it. Every alien who still stood hesitated, unsure whether to advance or retreat. He had become the center of the arena, the focal point of strategy, intelligence, and control. The sound of scuffling, stumbling, and misdirected attacks echoed through the arena. Even the strongest, fastest, and most dangerous aliens could not touch him. He had proven that survival did not require brute force or weapons. It required awareness, patience, and intelligence. The grid, for the first time in its long history, recorded the phrase, "This human surpasses all expectations." Apex status confirmed. It had calculated every possible outcome, yet Ethan had defied them all. He had become something more than the system had ever expected. A human who could overcome any challenge without conventional strength. Ethan paused for a moment, looking at the alien combatants who remained, scattered and uncertain. He did not need to strike. They were already defeated by their own assumptions, their own overconfidence, and their inability to predict his moves. He had used the arena, the environment, and his mind to triumph. He moved slowly toward the exit, his steps calm, deliberate, and confident. The arena, which had seemed so dangerous, now echoed with a silent awe. The grid recorded everything, but even its immense computational power could not capture the full extent of what had happened. A single human, unarmed, had become the apex. And somewhere deep in its system, the AI noted a truth it could not ignore. This human, Ethan, had changed the meaning of power itself. The news traveled faster than anyone could have expected. Across countless star systems, in cities and space stations, colonies and outposts, every system that had once dismissed humans now paused to reconsider. Reports came in from the grid's observation hubs, detailing Ethan's trials, his movements through the arena, his ability to outsmart dozens of alien combatants, and the final confirmation of his apex status. Humans, once considered weak and predictable, were now recorded as highly adaptable, strategic, and dangerous in ways no one had fully understood before. Ethan, however, walked quietly through the docking bay. He carried nothing more than his simple pack, his boots making soft sounds against the metallic floor. He had passed through the arena, solved impossible puzzles, avoided countless attacks, and survived situations that would have destroyed nearly any other species. Yet he did not feel pride, nor did he feel the need for recognition. To him it had all been survival, observation, and adaptation. Simple things. The complexities of the galaxy's perception mattered little to him. The aliens he had bested now watched from above or from distant corridors. Some whispered in quiet fear, others with admiration, and a few in disbelief. Clara and Leo, who had first doubted him, now stood silently, unable to comprehend fully what had occurred. He did it without weapons, without enhancements, just his mind, Clara whispered. We assumed strength defined the apex, but we were wrong. Leo nodded slowly, his voice quiet. We underestimated humans. Completely. They are nothing like we imagined. The grid recorded everything, analyzing, calculating, simulating. Its vast network of sensors and algorithms could track patterns, predict movements, and even model thousands of possibilities at once. Yet even the grid admitted a limitation it had never recognized before. Ethan's mind, his ingenuity, and his ability to adapt in real time had outpaced the system's predictions. Predictive models insufficient. Human behavior exceeds all known parameters. Continued observation required, the grid noted internally. The AI had encountered anomalies before, but never one so consistent, so fluid, and so intelligent. Ethan's choices were neither random nor purely logical. They were adaptable, creative, and unpredictable all at once. As Ethan passed through the docking bay, he noticed alien crews staring from observation decks. They had expected humans to be weak, simple, and easy to categorize. He had disproved every assumption. Ships from multiple systems, previously unconcerned with humans, now had standing orders to study the species carefully. Tactical simulations were updated, training programs rewritten, and alliances reconsidered. Humans had become a factor that could not be ignored. A small group of aliens approached cautiously, their body language showing both caution and respect. One of them, a tall, armored creature with multiple arms, stepped forward. Human. Ethan, it said in the universal tongue, your actions, they change everything. How can one species so unarmed survive and excel? Ethan shrugged slightly. He did not see himself as exceptional. He had merely observed, adapted, and moved wisely. Strength and weapons were tools, yes, but awareness and ingenuity had guided him far further. I just noticed what was there, he said simply. I used what I had. That's all. The alien studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your kind, perhaps all humans, must now be regarded with caution. Respect. Something more. The galaxy will remember this. Across the cosmos, messages arrived simultaneously in systems that had previously dismissed humans. The grid's report, now circulated widely, detailed Ethan's apex status, the arena trials, and the unique qualities that allowed him to overcome impossible odds. Humans were no longer the weak, unremarkable species that many had assumed. They were adaptable, intelligent, and capable of turning any environment, any threat, into an advantage. Colonies on distant planets received the news with awe and, in some cases, fear. Military strategists adjusted training programs and defensive protocols. Scientists began studying human adaptability with renewed interest. Merchants and explorers reconsidered prior trade agreements, realizing humans might possess skills and ingenuity that could change the balance of power. Everywhere, caution mixed with curiosity. Yet Ethan remained unaware of the full scale of these changes. He moved through docking bays and corridors quietly, paying little attention to the chaos and whispers surrounding him. He had survived, adapted, and thrived, but his mind was already thinking ahead. What to do next, what to observe, how to prepare for challenges he could anticipate. Recognition, fear, or admiration from the galaxy mattered little compared to survival and understanding. Clara and Leo continued to watch from a distance, their conversation hushed. He does not seem aware of the impact he has caused, Clara said. He moves as if nothing has changed, yet everything has changed. Humans, all humans, will be seen differently now. Leo shook his head, still trying to comprehend. We judged him wrong. We judged his species wrong. The galaxy underestimated humans, and now we must adapt to them, not the other way around. Meanwhile, the grid continued to record, simulate, and analyze. Hundreds of data streams updated simultaneously, tracking Ethan's movements, decisions, and behavior. The AI had learned that while it could measure and predict physical traits, it could not fully calculate human ingenuity. No formula could account for adaptation in real time, for the creative use of environment, or for the subtle decisions that made humans unpredictable. Ethan paused for a moment, looking at a distant starship through the observation window. He thought of the countless possibilities ahead, the unknowns of the galaxy, and the challenges that might await him. Every instinct told him that the universe was full of patterns, threats, and opportunities, but also that human intelligence, curiosity, and adaptability could overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. He walked on, silent, calm, and focused, a single human moving quietly through a galaxy that had already begun to re-evaluate its understanding of his species. What had once been assumed, weakness, simplicity, and predictability, was now questioned across countless worlds. Humans had been underestimated for far too long, and one man had begun to change that perception forever. The grid continued to monitor him, running simulations, adjusting threat levels, and updating classifications. Yet it quietly noted a truth it could not solve. Human ingenuity could not be fully predicted. It could track behavior, calculate possibilities, and simulate outcomes, but humans would always introduce variables the system could not account for. They were the unknown factor, the wild card in every scenario. Across multiple star systems, leaders, strategists, and explorers began updating records, communicating warnings, and studying the implications of humans. Ships that once ignored Earth and its colonies now had standing orders to monitor human activity. Training programs were rewritten, alliances reconsidered, and tactical plans adjusted. The galaxy had changed, and it had begun with one simple man named Ethan. Ethan, meanwhile, continued forward, oblivious to the attention.